Have you ever known a couple that over the years started looking more and more like each other? Or have you ever looked in the mirror and saw your mom or your dad staring back at you suddenly? My dad is adopted, and he manages to look more and more like my grandpa every year. I have a cousin that I'm not related to biologically that I look exactly like. Not because of our physical attributes, but because of our mannerisms and habits. Because we spend so much time together, you become similar. My son, Fred, inherited my husband's head shape and both of our unfortunate hairlines. My son, Leif, has my eyes and Andy's ears. Both boys have my mom's crafty smirk. Leif has great-grandma Joyce's German stumpy legs, and Fred has the surprising and random height of his grandpa Bill, who is 6'5" in a family of 5'5"ers. Fred looks most like Andy when he's laughing and making up wonderful stories. He looks most like me when he's trying to get away with something. 1 John is a text that beautifully and forcefully talks about family resemblance. See what love the Father has given us that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. The text in the Greek is even more exuberant. Behold, what love has been given to us by the Father that we should be called children of God, and we are. God has birthed all of creation and adopted us as his precious children. Our position in God's family as his children is both a passive role and an active one. We are positively showered with all of this unearned love, but we then are immediately called to release that unearned love and shower it on others who don't deserve it either. As God's children, we live in two worlds. We believe in a kingdom and we live in a kingdom that Jesus reigns over, where death and sin have been dealt with, and we are given the power to overcome the forces that oppose God. That's true. And on the other hand, we live in this world, and we are waiting for Jesus to return and set things totally right. We live in the in-between. 1 John declares that we are members of one family, and we should look alike. Not physically the same, but we should act alike, embodying the values of Jesus' kingdom. The elder, as the author of the letter of 1 John, is known. In saying something so simple, says something very radical. As children of God, we embody Jesus in the world, and we should act like Jesus. According to the Gospel of John and the letter of 1 John, believed to have been written by the same author, Jesus was born into the world to give us a future that is purposeful now in our time on earth and eternal later on. And it is daunting how much this world needs Christians to actually look like Christians, living values of peace and justice and truthfulness and trustworthiness. But we never stand in our own power. The Holy Spirit is always within and around us. Jesus was revealed to draw us into the Father's love. He was revealed so that we could abide in that love. When we abide in that love, we are not afraid that our status as children will be changed or taken from us. We are God's beloved children. Now, we will continue to be God's beloved children, no matter what befalls us. We have the immense responsibility, though, to be responsive to that love. We have to keep our hands and our hearts wide open in a world that wounds. 1 John warns us that's not easy. Looking like Jesus, having the family resemblance, means that we mirror Jesus' sincerity, kindness, humility, and love in a world that rejects those attributes and, frankly, seeks to snuff those virtues out. We don't live in a culture that celebrates gentleness. If you're wondering where lawlessness is most clearly manifested in our time, just get behind the wheel. Re-emerging from this pandemic, everyone has forgotten how to drive. It's a phenomenon. I found myself behaving like two very different people, depending on whether I'm getting into my car or out of my car. No one seems to remember the rules of the road. I've been cut off dangerously just to sit right behind that same car at a red light. Cars will pass me going 55, 60 miles per hour down France on my way to church on a Sunday morning. Blinkers are a thing of the past. Cars don't even come equipped with them anymore. I'm tailgated every time I'm on any road, every major highway, even with a little sticker on the back of my vehicle that says, "Baby on board." It doesn't matter. We live in a me-first culture at the expense of everyone else. When I get into my car, I have to assume that everyone else will do the wrong thing, intentionally or unintentionally. When I get out of my car, I have to switch personalities almost back to the discipline of seeing everyone in the best possible light, as Martin Luther said. Jesus said that while we wait for his return, while we have a foot in both worlds, we need to be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves. Martin Luther always said that we are simul justus et peccator, at once justified and also always a sinner. We're sinners in need of saving, and we are saints who rest in the assurance that we have already been saved. We are always totally forgiven by God and in need of forgiveness from God in every moment. The Christian life is a rigorous life, and it usually involves tension, lots of tension in ourselves and with our brothers and sisters. That's why lots of folks either turn to a church community that will give them easy answers, or they will walk away, because the tension between our culture that tells us to chase your bliss and do whatever feels good to you, and Jesus, who teaches us that we actually are meant to be repairers of breaches, pray for our enemies, lay down our lives for the sake of our brothers and sisters, died to the old Adam and Eve that lives within us, well, that tension is great. We will not be rewarded for our kindness, our humility, our discipline of putting others before ourselves. We will not be given pats on the back every time we think deeply about how someone else would like to be treated and protected. The world will not be happy with us when we push back against evil in our time. And I'm sure we all have a sense of what needs to be righted and changed. Here's my short list. You can agree or disagree. Warfare, greed, the dehumanization of entire nations. Poverty is a great evil. Starvation when there is enough food for every person, but a lack of will and collaboration to ensure it gets to hungry people. Gun violence, the rise in anti-Semitic and anti-Islamic violence. Our systems that fail to protect children. The ways in which we ignore mental illness and we underfund the care of people that could be life-changing. And as a foster mom, I feel like I can speak from a place of authority when it comes to systems that I've lived in and learned about. We live in between two worlds. And that's why sometimes things are tense in our spirits and in our communities. But here in God's house, we have to work hard to celebrate and nurture those Jesus-like traits and virtues that we see in our brothers and sisters. 1 John balances the promise of being God's children right now with the warning that we are always growing into a future that we cannot see, and it might make us feel a bit unstable. But love is not diminished by the unknown. It's needed even more. The world we live in doesn't recognize its need to be cradled in God's love, and that's where we come in. We should look so strikingly different in our behaviors and our values from what is expected and celebrated in our aggressively individualistic culture that people are so bewildered and confused by you that they would like to know more. As children of God, we are responsible. We're enabled to respond to the cries that rise up around us for love and protection, care and action. Fred and Leif, my sons, might look a lot like Andy and myself right now. But I am longing for the days where they will start to look more and more like you. I want them to resemble God's family here in their longing to be reconciled to their neighbors. I want them to put on the sincerity and humility of our brother, Jesus. I want to watch them listen and love with an earnestness that causes me to say, oh, wow, they really look like Paul today, or Marilyn and Bob today. I want their generous hearts to make them look like Keith and Marlis, Janice, Ron, Sue, Jen, Linda, Chip, Nancy. I want their unbounded joy to remind me of Dave Dixon, as there is no one else that can rise to that level of enthusiasm. Their community-centered creativity, I would love for that to remind me of Erica, Brian, Karen and Rod, Leo and Diane, Jamie and Jean. Their desire to always include and invite more and more people remind me of Sandy or Renee, Donna, Paul or Gretchen, Daryl and Eloise, Stephanie and Angela and Mason. Their love of learning and curiosity remind me of Jerry and Diane, Mary and Bella and Max. Their willingness to step up to the plate when it is needed will remind me of Michael and Kristen, Steve and Karen, Irene, Nadine, Judy, Pamela, Carmen, John, Pets. Their passion for truth and justice. I'd love to see the faces of Al and Hildred, Jerry and Louise, Shelley and Ryan. Their nurturing spirits. I want to see Dolores and Paul, Sophie, Dick and Joanne, Denny and Janet. Their zest for life. I'd love to see Lois and Vern, Rick and Carol, Bob and Phyllis, and Marilyn. Really, for all of these, just say, and Marilyn at the end. Any of the Marilyns, they're all stellar. Their wit and wisdom remind me of Bonnie and Jim, Kim and Dale, Meg and Tom, Ingrid and Keith, Sally and Saki. I could stand here all day, and I hear some murmurings of fear that I will, but I won't. We could go through our directory, and I could tell you how I would like Fred and Leif to look like you. So if you didn't get to hear your name and you want to hear, well, how do you hope Fred and Leif will look like me? I will tell you. I won't do it now, because we're running low on time. But I want to look at Fred and Leif, and I want to see you because you abide in Jesus. And the beautiful, selfless, loving, generous things that we do in the world make people know we belong to the family of Jesus. If Jesus is revealed to take away sins and do away with evil, and if I am to abide in him, what should I be about? And if the forces of evil in the world show themselves in chaos and indifference and cruelty, what will you say? You are the children of God, ministers of God in the world right this moment. So what will you do about it? Thanks be to God for the family that he is creating here. May we transform more and more into the listeners, the repairers, the prayers, and the peacekeepers that Jesus longs for us to be. Amen.